Welcome, brave souls, to the chilling depths of horror and detail, the realm where the shadows whisper ancient secrets and nightmares come to life. I am your guide through the darkness, and on this channel, we delve into the spine-chilling world of werewolf horror stories that will send shivers down your spine. First story: the Georgia werewolf, unexplained to this day. One of the more curious paranormal incidents in Georgia is the Georgia werewolf Emily Isabella Burt. Apparently, Ms. Burt was a resident of Talbot County, a rural county in southwest Georgia between Macon and Columbus. The Burt family, a wealthy and prominent family in the Talbot County community, had several children. Of all of her children, it appears that Emily Isabella was the one with the most problems. For one, she had inherited a lot of physical traits from her father, including dark hair and bushy eyebrows. However, she was said to have had sharp, white canine teeth that made her smile quite disturbing. In one report, Roberts claims that Emily Isabella's mother took her to a local dentist to see if the teeth could be altered in any way. He could do nothing for her. Soon afterwards, she fell ill and suffered from restless nights. Emily is said to have strangely wandered the county during her restless nights. Legend has it that the beau of one of Emily Isabella's sisters, a William Gorman, reported to the Burts that something was killing his sheep. Fearful that this may soon be happening to her animals, Mrs. Mildred Burt became quite concerned. On ensuing visits, Gorman would recount stories about more sheep killings, and that some of his cattle were killed as well. He was concerned about the killings and decided to take action. He reported that he was going to be putting together what amounted to a posse. Their intentions were to shoot and kill whatever beast was doing the damage. Emily Isabella was unusually interested in what was going on and what events had transgressed in the hunt for this animal. On the night of the big hunt, Mildred Burt, who also had inherited more than a few guns and was a great markswoman, went out with her pistol. She apparently suspected that Emily Isabella was somehow involved with the killings, and she wanted to be prepared for anything. As she was near the area, an animal lunged for her and she fired. It ran away. Interestingly enough, the next morning, it was reported that Emily Isabella had a bullet hole in her left hand. After being taken to a local physician, her mother decided to send her to Paris to be treated by a doctor who specialized in lycanthropy, a disorder that made its victims think they were werewolves. While she was in Paris, the attacks stopped, and once she returned, supposedly cured, the attacks fell to a minimum. Emily died in 1911 and is buried in a small cemetery out in the wilderness of Georgia. To this day, a number of paranormal incidents are reported in the area, with the grave itself generally believed to be haunted by the ghost of the werewolf. People report a strange stillness or sense of unease around the cemetery, and the grave itself is strangely well kept even though the cemetery itself is overgrown and forgotten. Others have reported that when small tokens, chips of stone, etc., are taken from the cemetery, bad things happen to those people not long afterward. There are even some people who note that even just talking poorly of Emily or her family causes the same problems to happen, as if the werewolf does not want others to speak ill of her. Second story: that time I saw a skinwalker, a witch, and a werewolf. Late summer, 1986. We were driving through the Rocky Mountains on our way to Ouray. There were three of us: Steve, Danny, and me. We were young, dumb, and fed up with what life was really like after college. So we bought some matches, packed a cooler of beer, food, and beer, and loaded up my trusty Toyota with all the fixings for a classic camping trip. This trip was supposed to shake up the devastating monotony of our daily life, and shake us up it did, to the very core. Right before we were getting ready to set out, Steve's mom ran out of the house and told him he should take their newly adopted family dog, Luna, for safety. Steve was hesitant. He didn't want to have to look after the dog, especially if we were going to be drinking. And she was a big dog, a mixed husky and something else, Great Dane maybe. But his mom insisted until, finally, he broke and agreed to take her. Luna looked up at him with her warm blue eyes and seemed to smile. Steve sighed and said, "I guess I'll sit in the back with her." "No, no," I said, walking over and patting her head. "Let her sit up front with me." She wagged her tail. Most of the car ride went smoothly, and we sang along to the radio, mooed at cows, and waved at, or flipped off, motorcyclists. But as we neared our destination, and the sun sank behind us, leaving us in a thick, almost tangible darkness, we started to become jumpy, pointing at strange shadows and swift movements. Luna, though, was curled up and asleep beside me, unaware of our growing fear. The sky was covered in big, roiling clouds that blew swiftly towards the east, covering and revealing the full moon at random intervals. By now we were the only vehicle on the road. My headlights barely sliced the darkness around us as we weaved our way through the mountains. The isolation, the darkness, the silence, it was all so crushing. "Steve, I thought you said we would be there before the sun set. I told you we shouldn't have stopped at that bar." Danny, I didn't know we'd be there for that long. You wouldn't stop your stupid pool game. And I won. Come on, it's not that dark out. Would some money make you happy? You asho. Hey, cool it, look, what the hell is that? I slowed the car down to a stop, trying to see what was blocking the road, but the light from the cloud-covered moon was too dim. What the hell? "Danny," I whispered as she rolled down her window. I was apprehensive, worried this was someone's attempt to rob us, or worse. I had heard all the urban legends before. "I just want to see better." She stuck her head out of the window, and I rolled a little bit closer. Luna, feeling the change in the car's movement, lifted her head and sat up, panting. Oh shit, I think it's a dead deer." "You guys, gross." Danny retreated back inside the car and rolled the window back up. "Who the hell just leaves something like that on the road?" "Assholes," Steve said, then leaned forward. "Hey man, think you can drive around it?" Yeah, I think I can." I approached the thing, now seeing the antlers and the gleaming black eyes, open, staring, dead. It blinked. I yelped and jerked the steering wheel, side-swiping the mountainside. "Shit, what the hell, man? It's alive." "What?" "That deer. It's alive." As I spoke, the deer lifted its head and bleated. The sound echoed around the chasm. We all jumped and watched as it pushed itself up until it was standing on its hind legs, like a man, but uncanny, grotesque. Mesmerized, we sat unable to move as the thing walked over to us, slowly, decidedly, as if walking on two legs was a thing this deer did often. It leaned down next to Danny's window, its face so close to the glass that steam from its nose fogged it up. A low noise rang out through the car. Luna was growling, her hackles raised, crouched in the seat next to me. Bang! The thing rammed its head into the window. Chaos erupted. Danny screamed, piercing, "Hi!" Luna started barking, booming, persistent. Steve yelled, telling me to go. Just go. I, shaking, struggled with the clutch, stalling. Bang! The window cracked and the thing started making an incredible sound. It sounded like a weird screeching, guttural form of laughter. Finally the clutch caught and I sped the hell out of there. I checked the rear view and saw the thing, standing on two legs, looking after us. Suddenly it leapt forward and began running after us. It ran on 2 legs instead of 4, and it was fast, so fast. I drove as fast as I could on that winding mountain road, but, despite my speed, the thing still caught up with us. It tapped its antlers on my window and screeched that weird laughter again. Then it pointed in front of us, bared its teeth, and stopped. The abruptness of how quickly it disappeared caught me off guard. "Watch out!" I snapped forward, and what I saw made me slam on my brakes. A house. A house, in the middle of the road. I guess it was more of a cottage or a hut, but there it was, clear, vivid, in front of us. Danny was audibly crying in the back seat, repeating, "What the," over and over to herself. Steve was breathing heavily, like he had just run a marathon. Luna was whimpering beside me and scratching at the window. Nausea enveloped me, made worse by the vibration from my pounding heart. Seriously, what the hell is going on? I think I'm going to puke, man. Don't open that door. Just back up, turn around. Man, let's go back. Towards that thing? No way, man. Well, if you didn't notice, there's a goddamn house in front of me. Just drive through it, come on. No, 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 no. Danny, calm down. It's okay. We're okay. We'll be okay. Danny simpered and started sobbing again. Danny, please. Guys, look. Oh God. The house, it was spinning, slowly, and stopped when the front of it pointed directly at my car. The door to the house slammed open, emitting a sound like a gunshot. A single point of light emerged from the darkness inside the house. A candle, and holding it up was a figure, stooped over, covered in what looked like blackened rags. It began to approach us, lurching forward swift, then slow, then swift again. It was making this eerie, deep staccato sound. Are you for real right now? Steve was leaning forward, peering out the windshield. Let's go. Reverse. That thing is behind us. Run it over. Look, look. Danny screamed. The stooped figure was now running at full speed straight at us. It slammed onto my hood, and we could finally see that it was an old woman, covered in wrinkles, completely bald, with sharpened yellow teeth. She was moaning and moaning. She crawled up the hood, opened her mouth, and licked the glass, leaving a trail of blood-colored saliva. Luna went wild, barking, foaming at the mouth, throwing herself at the door. Please, 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 please. Back up now. I slammed my foot on the gas, but my tires made a sickening sound, and the smell of burnt rubber slipped into the car. It's behind us. It's behind us. I turned back to see the deer's head, teeth still bared, peering at me from the back window. What do we do? What do I do? Luna, no. With a final lunge, Luna forced the door open. It sounds shocking, but she was such a large dog and strong. A powerful wind picked up and the roiling clouds dissipating, allowing the light from the full moon to illuminate the scene in front and behind us. Luna was as still as a statue, slightly crouched, poised to leap. The hackles on her back quivered, and a single thread of drool spun itself down from her mouth. She began to shake, faster and faster. It looked like she was having a seizure. The old woman and the dear thing were both looking over at her. Something strange was happening to Luna. It looked as if her limbs were breaking, elongating. Her snout narrowed, sinking closer to her face. She rose up onto her hind legs, humanoid, and howled up towards the sky before locking eyes with the hag on my car. In the blink of an eye, Luna was on the woman, ripping her away, shaking her to and fro in her jaw like a rag doll. Luna flung the woman towards the house, and she struck it with some force and didn't get back up. The house, and the woman vanished in a puff of smoke. Luna turned towards the thing behind us. It screeched, raising itself up to its full height, challenging her. Luna howled again, then licked her fangs. The thing took 2 steps towards her, before turning tail and fleeing down the road, Luna giving chase. They both ran on 2 legs, instead of 4. We sat in total silence for a few moments, until I leaned over and slammed the passenger side door closed. I think Danny passed out. I turned to look at Steve. He looked at me. Let's get out of here, man. We got 2 miles before the thunk, thunk, thunk beneath us couldn't be ignored any longer. A flat tire. I pulled over, and we eyed the darkness around us, paranoid. I'm not changing it. I'm not going out there, Steve said loudly. Don't worry, there's no spare. What? I took it out, to make room for all the camping stuff. Are you kidding me? Nope. Well, what the hell do we do now? I sighed. I didn't know. Suddenly, like magic, like a miracle, headlights appeared behind us. A godsend, a car. I hope they're normal. Me too. Should we tell them? We locked eyes again. No. If they bring it up, maybe. If it's a cop, definitely not. He'll think we're high. The car rolled up beside us. It was totally black with tinted windows. The window rolled down, and behind it sat a middle-aged man. He looked tired, maybe sad. Need some help? Oh, thank God, Steve whispered. Yes, flat tire. Don't have a spare. Well, that's dumb, the man said. You should always carry a spare, always. Never know what could happen. Lucky for you. I think I have one that will fit your car. You joking? The man shook his head and hopped out of his car. He was dressed sharply. Black suit, black tie, black shoes, all covered by a trench coat. Come on. You can hold the flashlight for me. I hesitated, then exited the car. What happened here? He pointed to the window next to Danny's head. Oh, it's been like that for a while. Dumb neighbor kid hit it with a baseball. The man nodded. And her? Tired, just tired. We've been driving for a while. Driving where? Ouray. For camping. Nice place. We've heard. Say, the man said, releasing the jack. Job done. Seen anything weird tonight? My heart sped up, and I looked around us half expecting the deer, or the woman, or Luna to come sprinting towards us. What do you mean weird? Oh, I dunno. Anything out of the ordinary. No, why? Oh, no reason. Just heard some spooky tales. Tales? That the natives who used to live around here would tell. What tales? The man stood up and dusted his hands off on his coat. Well, he said, ignoring my question, you're all set. You're about 20 minutes out from Ouray, and 2 hours from the sunrise. I'd advise you get a move on. Never know what might be stalking you out there. I'm headed the same way, actually. I can drive behind you if you like. A muffled, yes, came from inside the car, and we both looked up to see Steve nodding voraciously. Yeah, that would be great, actually. The corners of the man's mouth twitched a bit as he nodded, sliding back into his car. We drove to Ouray without incident and, as soon as we hit the city, the man in the car behind us flashed his brights twice, then flipped a U-turn, speeding back down the way we came. I thought he said he was going this way, I said, looking in my rear view. Who cares? Let's get a hotel room and leave first thing tomorrow morning, Danny said. She had woken up as we were driving towards Ouray. We filled her in on the strange man and how he helped us, but she was still spooked and jumpy. And we did just that. We didn't dare camp in the wilderness, or even leave the relative safety of the town. On the way back to civilization, We swore to never tell anyone what happened. It was too weird, uncanny, horrifying. Steve was silent, afraid of what his mom might say or do about Luna. We made up some story about how she had fallen over a cliff after chasing a deer. Poor Luna. We did stop for an hour, around the area it happened, and called out to her, but to no avail. We never saw her again. It's been years since this happened and I'm old now. The three of us lost touch after we returned from the trip, but vowed to keep this secret to our death. Last I heard, Steve died from a heart attack and Danny was diagnosed with stomach cancer. I figured it's about time I shared my tale. Maybe it'll help me make some semblance of sense out of it. In the end, though, I don't know if those things were protecting us from her, or if she was protecting us from them. I guess I'll never know. Sometimes, late at night, when I hear howling, I like to imagine it's Luna, out there, somewhere, running free in the wild. Third story. I'm an American werewolf hunter. My name is Boston Murphy, and I kill werewolves for the U.S. government. I didn't join the army to get medals or to have a statue in my honor. I joined it to simply get away from my family. My father is okay, but his new wife's the most evil person you could have the misfortune of meeting. She used to constantly berate me, calling me less than dirt and a waste of space. I tried telling Dad, but he didn't believe it, or chose not to believe it. I joined the army when I was 17. It was the only way of getting away from the verbal abuse. Stepmom couldn't be happier that I was finally out of her house, but Dad was crushed. He understood why I chose to do it, but he still felt like it was his fault. It was shipping out day, and he gave me an emotional send-off. It was time to start my own life. I arrived to Fort Bronson by Thursday. I still remember having goosebumps arriving. This was it. I was really doing this. No turning back now. Fort Bronson was a massive base, expanding over 60 acres. The bus stopped, and drill instructor Haymeyer walked on board, gracing us with his hospitality. Attention, you piss cans. I'm Instructor Haymeyer. I'll be your friend for the next 18 weeks. Now get your sorry asses off my bus and get checked in. Do I make myself clear? Sir, yes, sir. We all shouted in unison. We got our bags and got off the bus. Since I was sitting in the very back, I was the last one to leave. Haymeyer looked at me and stopped me. What's your name, cadet? He asked. B. Boston Murphy, sir. I replied, nervous. He looked me up and down, muttering to himself, You're not going with them. You're going to Special Assignment Ward. Haymeyer said, I haven't been here more than 10 minutes, and I'm already getting a special assignment. Where is that, sir? I asked. In the room next to the mess hall, in the north building. Now get the hell off my bus. Haymeyer replied. I quickly got my bags and left. The north building was the farthest building on base, away from everyone else. The sun was furious that day. I was sweating hard. Yet I walked at a brisk pace. All I know, it could be the first test. I entered the building. The air conditioning inside greeted me like an old friend. The place was a maze of stairs and hallways. I had to use my map. The mess hall was located on the second hallway. I climbed the stairs, carrying my luggage with me. This building seemed less maintained than the other buildings, but who am I to judge? As I approached the mess hall, I turned to the door to the left. It looked like a janitor's closet. It had a faded special assignments sticker on the door. I opened it. A rush of old, musty air ambushed my nose. Once inside, I walked down a long hallway. There was no paint on the walls. It was gray. The fluorescent lights shined bitterly. Through a pair of double doors, I entered a waiting room. The place was empty. Only a receptionist and another cadet populated the place. I went to the receptionist. Name, please. She said, Boston Murphy. I replied. She checked her notes, sighing. I don't see you in my notes. You must be new. Why, yeah. Instructor Haymeyer sent me here, I said, sweating. She dialed a number on her phone, motioning me to take a seat. I did what she asked. The other cadet in the room was a skinhead called James. You new here too, huh? He asked. Yeah, man, I replied. Me too. I was so ready to kick some jihadi ass, but I'm here instead. You feel me? He asked. Yeah, I lied. The truth was that I didn't join to kill. I was hoping to be a medic or something. My name's James. What's yours? He asked. Boston, I replied. You seem cool, Boston. Personally, I hope this was a mistake. I want to hit the range and make those bastards pay for 9/11, James said. Cadet James Fillmore. The receptionist said, I guess that's my K. See ya, brother, James said, patting my back. I waited to be called in, watching videos on my phone. The receptionist on the phone looked at me every so often, whispering. After what seemed like centuries, I was finally called up. The receptionist told me to go through the double doors and into the first door on the right. I walked through, luggage in hand. The hallway I walked in was small and dark. The door on the right said, Lycanthropy Extermination with Greg Romero. Lycanthropy, like in Werewolves? This had to be a joke. Surely Haymeyer played a prank on me, testing how gullible new recruits are. I looked further down the hall. It only got weirder from there. Wendigo Extermination with Susan Fletcher. Thunderbird Extermination with Otto Haymeyer. Zombie Extermination with Tony Stevenson. I had half a mind to walk out and confront Haymeyer, but something told me that he didn't appreciate being called a liar. Despite my doubts, I walked in. Inside it looked like a regular classroom, having desks and such. James was sitting in the back while I sat near the front. Hey, Boston, small world, am I right? He asked. I suppose, I replied. I sat down, and a man started speaking. Welcome, cadets, I'm Greg Romero, and for the next 18 weeks, I'll teach you how to dispatch a Lycanroc. Mr. Romero said. James raised his hand. Aren't werewolves fake, though? He asked. I wish they were fake, but no, they're not. Lycanrocs pose a serious threat to livestock and humanity as a whole. Mr. Romero replied. I raised my hand. Where's the rest of the class? I asked. Romero sighed. We're not as popular as Wendigo Extermination, but hopefully we'll receive more recruits next year. Romero showed a photo of a mutilated woman being eaten by a werewolf. I gagged. We have a thankless job, gentlemen. Only 2 people know we exist, and that's the 2 of you. Who wants to kill a wolf? Romero asked. We both shouted in unison. For the next 18 weeks, I was taught how to kill a wolf. Silver does kill one, but instead of a crossbow, I got a Mini 14 with silver bullets. I was trained how to track wolves and how to survive in the wild. It was hard at first, but I got the hang of it. On graduation day, I was so happy. James and I got drunk at his place. At first, I didn't like James, but during training, we became friends. I was deployed to Arizona, of all places. The assignment was simple. An elderly Lycanroc was spotted in the area, and I had to dispatch him. I had to cut off its right hand as proof and return it to my bosses. I was getting paid $100,000 for this. Since I was new, this assignment was sort of a test to see if I have what it takes. I arrived to Ground Zero, a campsite. The brass in Washington were nice enough to close its surrounding area, so nobody could get hurt. I looked for clues, only to find a patch of hair. It smelled like piss, meaning that a wolf was nearby. The hair led deep into the brush, into the desert. The sun was angry that day. It cooked my skin under all my armor. It led to an abandoned farmhouse, but any sign of a farm was dried up a long time ago. I crept to a window, rifle in hand. I peeked, and not only did I see the wolf, but there was also 2 little wolves, seemingly surrounding him. "Come on, Grandpa, let's go play," one of the little ones said, nibbling on the big one's ear. "In a while, kids, I have to rest," he replied. My hands were shaking, sweat dripped from my brow. I had to do this. I was getting paid to. I took a deep breath, then I kicked down the door. I opened fired, shooting the big one in the chest 4 times, sending him backwards. The kids looked on in horror, screaming and crying. I brought out my axe and hacked off his right hand. I placed it in my bag, the puppies still crying. "Shut your mouths," I yelled, pointing my rifle at them. They only screamed louder. I panicked. I didn't want to fail my first mission. I did what I had to. I shot the puppies, hitting them both in the head. I hacked off their right hands, putting them in my bag. Once the adrenaline died, I threw up. What's done is done. I can't fix it. I had $300,000 in my bag, softening the blow. I returned to my boss and gave them the hands. They were surprised to say the least. "Damn, not only did you take out that old fuck, but you popped his grandkids too. You're the best exterminator we ever had. No mercy. I'm gonna call you Eisener from now on, okay?" My boss said, signing me a check. It was from the United States Treasury, $300,000. I placed the money in my bank account when I got home. Before I left, my boss said, "Your new assignment is to dispatch wolf pups spotted in Alaska, but I don't think that would be a problem for you, Eisenerv." He winked. It made me sick. I reloaded my silver ammo, bought some beef jerky, and flew to Alaska. A logger found a wolf pup hanging out around the woods near his house and locked it in his shed. I told him to stay back, in case it got aggressive. I went in, closing the door behind me. Huddled in the corner, I saw 4 wolf pups. They looked scared. I wasn't proud of what happened next. I fired, and I took their hands. I returned to my boss and turned in the hands. He gave me $400,000 this time. "Eisenerv, you're making your country safer every time you go out. You're a hero, son," he said. "I don't feel like a hero, sir," I replied. "Just know this, they're monsters. They don't know right from wrong. All they know is killing. Take 2 months off, then come back, okay?" he said, sending me off. I still don't feel like a hero. 4th story. There's a werewolf in my town. I didn't believe in it until recently. I think the sightings first started up about 10 years ago. That's the same time my family moved to this town. I was only 12 at the time. Since then, many have claimed to have seen some sort of wolf or hyena-like animal running around. Supposedly, it roams the forest right next to our neighborhood at night. I went around and interviewed the eyewitnesses. Every description was the same. They said it has thick brown fur and bright blue eyes. It also has the ability to stand on its hind legs and is about my height when fully upright. These sightings are common enough that even the law enforcement officers believe in this werewolf. They say there are no officially recorded wolves or mountain lions or any other similar animals in this area that could explain the sightings. They've also tried to catch it more than once, but it clearly has human-level intelligence, since it has always been able to evade them. And no one knows where it goes during the day. The sightings just seem to get more and more common as the years flew by, to the point where even my parents had claimed to see it once or twice. My mother says she saw it running across a road while driving home from work late at night, while my father said he saw it creeping around our front yard, before leaping over the fence and running back into the woods where it lurks. Everyone in this town claims to have seen this werewolf at some point, except for me. I don't believe in the thing. Why should I? Everyone knows eyewitness accounts are the least reliable form of evidence, since they can easily be fabricated, exaggerated, or misinterpreted. That said, just recently, some extremely convincing physical evidence has been found. For instance, some people have photographed large footprints clearly canine in origin, but much larger than that of a fox or coyote. More gruesomely, hikers have been finding carcasses with their necks and spines violently snapped open with powerful bone-crushing jaws. Ever since these deaths turned up, everyone in town has been keeping their pets and livestock indoors at night for safety, especially since the creature seems to be losing its fear of humans, hence the recent sightings of it in urban areas. One of our elderly neighbors even claimed she saw it digging through her garbage right by her window. She says it turned right in her direction, before going over to the window, pressing its muzzle against the glass and breathing powerful, hungry breaths before she ran to her bedroom, pulled the blanket over her head, and stayed there until morning. After hearing that story, I knew I had to get to the bottom of this. Even if it wasn't a werewolf, there was clearly something in our town wreaking havoc. Maybe a feral dog, or even an escaped hyena that someone was keeping as an illegal exotic pet. I decided I was going to try and catch the creature on film myself, no matter how difficult it would be. I set up a camouflage tent in the backyard, right next to the forest, and brought with me a headlamp, a video camera, and a gun. The latter I brought just in case I needed to defend myself from this animal. I set the camera up on a stand right outside the tent, pointed towards the woods, before crawling into my tent, zipping the door shut, and falling asleep. The next morning, I felt a breeze coming from the front of the tent. I sat up and nearly had a heart attack when I saw that there was a gigantic hole torn in the tent door. I peeked out of the hole and noticed the chewed-up carcass of a turkey lying in front of the tent, along with large paw prints surrounding it. He was here, I thought. I wanted to be excited, but I was mainly terrified. I had been extremely close to being this animal's dinner. The animal had torn open my tent, then for whatever reason, decided I wasn't worthy of a meal. Maybe the videotape will explain everything. I hooked the camera up to my computer and uploaded it before examining the footage. At the very beginning of the video, I saw myself setting the camera up before stepping out of view to get into the tent. The next hour of footage was unfortunately corrupted for whatever reason, so I skipped ahead another few hours. At approximately 3 a.m., I saw a big furry wolf-like creature walk out of the woods, its eyes shining brightly in the dark. It was carrying the same dead turkey from before in its jaws. The creature then walked over to the tent, dropped the turkey to the ground, and reared up on its hind legs like a bear. I felt chills run through my skeleton as the animal leaned forward and disappeared completely from the camera. Not only had it torn open my tent, but it had crawled into the tent with me as I was sleeping. I held my breath, desperately waiting for the animal to come crawling out of my tent and run back to the woods where it came. But it never did. Instead, as the sun rose up over the backyard, I saw myself climb out through the hole in the tent, walk over to the camera, and shut it off. After the footage was over, I felt anxious and confused. Even though that shot of it entering the tent was out of view of the camera, I'd expect to see some sort of movement from its paws as it tore the tent open. It was as if the opening in the tent was already there when it entered the yard. Had it torn the tent open in the corrupted footage? Also, if it had slept with me in the tent the entire night, how come it wasn't there when I woke up? The footage should have shown it going through the opening, and it's not like there was any other way of leaving the tent. Then it hit me. I suddenly remembered all those mornings where I would wake up with dirty hands and feet for no explainable reason, and those mornings where my breath would smell worse than usual. as if I had devoured a whole bunch of rotting meat as a midnight snack. My heart sank. The entire room began to swirl around me as I struggled to stand. All of the pieces were falling into place. Why the creature only appeared at night, while I was sleeping. Why I was the only one in town who had never seen the thing. Why the camera had caught it entering the tent, but not leaving. It turns out, the camera had caught the creature leaving the tent, and that creature was the one who set up the camera in the first place. Fifth story. I think I'm turning into a werewolf. Oh, my God, Sophie said, and fell back against the sheets, exhausted. I haven't been like that since I was a little girl. I fell down next to her, panting as well, and laughed. Sophie, that's terrible. I grabbed the pillow from beneath my head and hit her with it, and her breasts jiggled. What can I say? You bring out the worst in me. She smiled beneath her messy hair, moist with sweat. Ha, don't I know it? I smiled back. You'll pay for that. Later. Sophie threw the pillow back, and it hit me in the face. We fell asleep, and when we woke up the evening had turned night. Damn, I said. Now my sleep cycle's going to be all messed up. Sophie got out of bed and got dressed. She slipped on her watch and looked at its face. Double damn, I'm going to be late for Lydia's party. She pulled her sweater over her head. I've got to run, dear, but it's been smashing as always. She bent down to kiss me, and I kissed her on the lips. Of course, always too busy for little old me, I said wistfully. Sigh. What is a boy to do? I put the back of my hand up against my forehead dramatically and laughed. She stuck out her tongue at me. Bye, Tommy. Bye, Sophie. I got dressed and headed out to the bar. I was meeting Jack at 10. It had started to rain, and then night felt cold and alive, earlier than it was. It was when I passed by the alley on 73rd next to that Chinese restaurant. The narrow one that somehow seemed extra dark and always freaked me out ever since I had started noticing it, that I heard a strange noise. It sounded like a mix between a yelp and a growl. I stopped in my tracks, not knowing whether to investigate or run. My choice was made for me, though. A woman stumbled out of the alley. The sight of her made my blood run cold. She was wearing a shredded tank top and jeans, both soaked in blood. She had blood in her hair, and on her face too. There was so much of it that it was pooling down by her feet. I wanted to call out to her, but my voice was stuck in my throat. She didn't need me to say anything, though. She was already making her way over to me. Are you hurt? I managed to whisper, but the look on her face answered that for me. It wasn't a look of pain or fear. It was a look of determination, of anger, of hatred. It was then that I began wondering if the blood was hers or someone else's. I panicked, fearing for my life. I should have run. I know that now, but hindsight is 20/20ths. I guess the adrenaline made me think that I was stronger than her. Plus, I thought to myself, what if she is hurt and needs help? Did I really want to walk away from someone who could be dying? She was only a few feet away from me when she fell to the ground. I should have asked her if she was okay. I should have said that I was going to get help. I should have ran, but I didn't. I did the opposite. I walked up to where she was sitting, and I crouched down next to her. That was where everything went wrong. Suddenly, the woman jumped up, and before I could move, she threw me to the ground. My vision turned starry as a searing white pain burst through my skull. I only partially saw her face as she bent towards me. I couldn't tell if it was just the blurriness, but were her teeth sharpened? Now is not the time to worry about people's dental hygiene. I reminded myself, trying to pull myself away from whoever this crazy bitch was. My head immediately disagreed, screaming in agony. The woman barked out a laugh above me. There was nothing else I could do but slowly, pathetically, painfully try to drag myself across the sidewalk and as far away as possible. With every shift of my body, she took a patronizing step towards me. Ah shit. I finally hit the wall. She started bending down towards me again. I tried to scream, but all that came out was a low moan. I was powerless against whatever she was going to do. Without warning, her head jerked hard to my neck and ripped at the skin, leaving a huge, gaping wound as her nails dragged down my chest. I don't remember if I physically screamed, but mentally I have never been louder. A few more bites, and I was on the verge of passing out. From the distance, somebody screamed, and all I could think in my fucked up state was, same. For some reason, the woman attacking me seemed off-put by this and got up, slinking back into the alley, tripping onto her hands and knees as she did. As red and blue flashes soon came into my quickly fading vision, I realized that somebody must have called the police or an ambulance. I vaguely noticed two people run over to with some sort of contraption, and they began to lift me up onto it. "There," I whispered, trying to point to the alleyway, but my arm falling miserably to my side. "What?" one of the people said. "The woman." I slurred out. They didn't seem to understand. "It's all right, sir. We're going to take you to help." I kept trying to tell them who attacked me, but to no avail, as I passed out almost as soon as they rolled me into the ambulance. I woke up in a hospital bed with no recollection of anything that had happened the night before. Very slowly, the pieces started to fill in. I tried to sit up, but there was so much pain everywhere that I immediately collapsed again. Rendered immobile, all I could do was wait for someone to come check in on me. What felt like forever later, I noticed two people standing outside my door. I didn't recognize them, but I could recognize that they seemed to be arguing over something. Eventually, the man ran his hands over his face before quietly stepping into my room. "Tommy," he said, "good to see you awake. I'm Dr. Engelman Dash." What? I couldn't manage any more words than that. I truly was exhausted. Yes, there are quite a few things to tell you. Would you like the good news first, or the bad news? "Good news," I croaked out through a parched mouth and cracked lips. I saw his eyebrows raise a fraction as he ticked off a box that read, "cognizant and responsive." He looked back up at me and saw my eyes on his clipboard, which he turned so that I couldn't read it. "Well, Tommy, the good news is that we saved your life. You will recover all your motor functions and mostly lead a normal life." He stopped talking and looked at me. "Bad news?" I croaked, drinking some water. "Well, not sure exactly how bad it is, or if it is entirely bad. There is quite a bit of cosmetic scaring from the animal attack, and once we get you fit enough to leave of your own recognizance, or a family member comes to get you, we can discuss some options in that respect. Now, the odd news. The animal that attacked you seems to have infected with what seems to be some sort of benign form of rabies." I sat up suddenly in shock. The doctor placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Tommy, please, relax." I said it was benign, which means we believe it is harmless. I was still skeptical, and Engelman could see it, plain as day, on my face. "We treated you while you were unconscious for rabies. That's part of the muscle soreness you're feeling, and it seems to have paid off. You're a lot better off than you were when they brought you in here 2 weeks ago." I dropped my water cup and found my voice again. 2 weeks. It made my throat raw. "What the? Please tell me you're fucking with me." Engelman gave me a sheepish look and explained. "You presented with swelling of the brain, and the bite was severely infected, and we thought it prudent to place you in a medically induced coma." I sat there and took in the news. I asked absent-mindedly for a phone to call Sophie or my folks. I called Sophie first. "Tommy," she exclaimed, "I'm already on my way with your parents. They called them. Then they called me as soon as you were awake. We chit-chat about how I was feeling and what all I couldn't remember. In less than 20 minutes, they all three burst into my room. It hurt to talk. Not much had changed since I was attacked. I was a missing person for a few days before everyone was sorted out. Then I asked Soph to close the door. Listen, it wasn't an animal. It was a woman that bit me. They looked at me sideways. Tommy, my mother cooed. I think they would be able to recognize if it was a person. Soph sat her hand on my head. I shook it under her fingernails for a refreshing scratch. That simple action soothed me. Ever since waking up, it had felt like my head was being split slowly in half. It felt like every muscle I had was stiff and sore. I had constantly felt on edge, and the attack from 2 weeks ago flashed through my mind. I could still see the woman's hunched back, the mania in her eyes, her jagged teeth. Wait, was it really a woman? My mother had a point. Maybe the doctors were right. Maybe it really was a rabid animal that had attacked me. My head pained me. My vision swam. I didn't know anymore. All I knew was that I felt happy with Sophie there, scratching my head. Everything's going to be all right, babe, she said. I closed my eyes. Thanks. Thanks for coming here so quickly. It's fine, Sophie said. You should really be thanking Dr. Engelman and the other doctors here. They saved you. We were scared to death, Tommy. We thought we'd lost you. I spent about a week here, waiting by your side. I'm sorry. Fuck, I'm so sorry. There's nothing to be sorry about, son, my father said. None of this is your fault. We're just glad you survived. The others weren't so lucky. The others? I croaked. My mother slapped my father's arm and said something to him in a hushed whisper, but he continued. There were a few other victims. Others around the area who got attacked by the same animal. 10 people died that night, maybe more. I recalled the scream I had heard on the night of the incident. So it had been another victim. That's terrible. Holy shit, I said. Sophie told me more. Word is that the doctor and his team proposed the same coma treatment for the others. Unfortunately, it wasn't as effective for them. Apparently, you were all in critical conditions, and the treatment was a Hail Mary that may or may not have worked. That's not what Dr. Engelman said, I stammered. She patted me on the head, ruffling my hair, comforting me. He was probably trying to lighten the load for you. You've been through a lot, babe. Don't worry about any of that, sweetie, my mother said soothingly. You're safe now, and that's all that matters. We don't have to worry about anything else. We were interrupted by someone knocking on the door. My father went to get it. It's Dr. Engelman, he said. They want to do a quick checkup to make sure you're all right. Han, Soph, we have to wait outside. As a team of doctors began to file inside, bearing all sorts of notes and equipment, my mother and girlfriend got up to leave. Sophie gave me a quick hug, embracing me in my bed. She pecked me on my right cheek, and then she said something into my ear in a subtle, hushed whisper. 3 words. 3 words that sent a chill crawling down my spine. Don't trust him. My parents and Sophie left and Engelman came back into the room, a big grin across his face. You're feeling better, son? Quiet and ordeal you've been through. These are the sorts of things he said. He said they were conditionally releasing me, but wanted me to come back in a couple days for observation. I signed some forms. They gave me my things back. Engelman was there still grinning next to me the whole time. Then finally said goodbye and disappeared into the labyrinthine green hallways of the hospital with his brown clipboard. Mom, Dad, and Sophie were waiting for me at the exit. We all hugged and Sophie kissed me. I love you, son, my dad said. I'm just glad you're all right. I love you too, Dad, I said. I just want to go home. Mom and Dad said goodbye and got into their white Chevy and drove away. Sophie and I got into her car and took off out into the night. It was dark outside and the moon was bright and full and round and white. 2 weeks, I thought. It feels like months have passed. It felt like time had no meaning anymore. I scratched behind my ear and looked at the hairs on my arm. They seemed darker than I remembered somehow. Sophie said how crazy everything was and how she thought I was dead. She started to cry, and I watched her wipe away tears glistening in the moonlight with her index finger. Her left hand stayed on the steering wheel, but I could see she clutched it tightly. It was dark in the apartment. The only light was that of the full moon pouring in through the bay windows. I didn't turn on the lights. For some reason, I didn't feel like it. Just threw my things on the floor and kicked off my boots. Sophie reached for the light switch, but I grabbed her hand. "Tommy," she said softly. Her cheeks were still wet from crying. "What are you doing?" "Shoo," I said, and kissed her. My lips were still dry. She kissed me back hard and then held me, and in the darkness I couldn't quite tell, but it sounded like she was crying again. "I missed you so much," she said. I put my hands on her, and we kissed again. Her tongue was warm and soft in my mouth, and it tasted good. Like, really good. Have you ever had a steak that was so perfectly cooked that you had to resist from shoving the whole thing in your mouth? It was like that, only better. I couldn't help myself. I bit her tongue. "Ow!" Sophie screamed and jumped up. "What the fuck, Tommy?" I started apologizing profusely, tripping over my words as I took a gentle step towards her. "Babe, I don't know what, I mean I didn't. I dash as I kept walking towards her. I could feel myself wanting to bite into her flesh again. Oh God, it was overwhelming. I spent my entire consciousness trying to push it back down my throat. I don't even remember how I got her to sit back down again, but somehow we were back on the couch together. Close. Very close. It was like I could smell her heartbeat. It was right there, in her throat, and I needed it down mine. Something animalistic came from deep inside me, and I started ripping apart her skin, trying to get whatever it was I needed from her. I hear her screams for a moment, and then suddenly, they stopped. I wasn't even aware of what I was doing. It just felt right. The taste of her skin and the texture of her blood, and finally I knew why that woman attacked me like this. Oh shit. I don't know why that thought snapped me out of my craze, but suddenly, I sat back and looked at what I had done. There was Sophie, or what was left of Sophie, covered in dark red from my couch to my kitchen. I had done that. Yet, I felt almost nothing. I knew, deep inside me, that I should be panicking, hyperventilating, running screaming out of my building, but that part was silenced by everything else in me. I calmly stood up and walked into my bathroom. It was only when I looked in the mirror that I began to feel. There was my reflection, except it looked nothing like me at all. Suddenly, I had a huge mange of hair all over my chin, some covering the rest of my face. As I internalized what I saw, I raised my hand to feel my face and saw that my hand, too, was suddenly covered in more hair than a dog's tail. Then since that none of that, should have happened hit me all at once, and I began to freak out. I clawed my skin, wishing desperately to be who I was only last month, when Sophie and I were happy and together and alive and normal and it took what felt like forever for me to calm down. I'm still panicked. I'm still lost. But I made myself sit up and look back in the mirror. It was too much. Too much change. Too much hair. I know. It's fucked up to be sitting here worrying about a beard when my girlfriend's corpse and torn up in my living room. Nothing makes sense right now. Nothing has made sense since the night of the attack. You know, I was going to turn myself in. I was. I don't want to live like this, knowing what I did, knowing that I liked it. But there's only one thing that stopped me. Just a minute ago, I got a call from Dr. Engelman. With a shaky hand, I slipped my phone out of my back pocket and picked it up. But before I could even say anything, he whispered, "Shh, there's no time. I know what you just did. I know what you are. Don't worry. I'm coming. Just close all your blinds, all right? Don't let the moonlight in, and don't go outside. I'm coming." And with that, he hung up. So, what? I turn myself in, saying that I'm a werewolf now and be put in a mental hospital, or I wait here and hope that Dr. Engelman know what he's talking about. I could run away, but that only increases the risk that I'll hurt another person. To me, it seems that I only have one option. I can only hope it's the right one. Still, as I sit here, waiting, Sophie's words keep playing in my mind, like she was still whispering them into my ear at this very second. Don't trust him.